Good evening, everybody.
How's it going?
We're happy to be here tonight.
We're going to talk today about pain and about suffering and about mourning with those who mourn. And this, I think this might be kind of a somber one. This is a really tough topic. This is a really sensitive and kind of close to my heart topic in a lot of ways. And so want to get started with something from Richard Rohr here. And I want to set this up a little bit by talking about, I think in the church, we have this idea that Jesus Christ died on the cross, suffered in Gethsemane, so that we don't have to suffer. Mm-hmm. And there's theological implications to that, and like what kind of suffering are we talking about, and those sorts of things. But generally, we still feel pain, and we still suffer. And Jesus suffered for us, but we still go through those things. So I want to hand it to you. What do you have here?
Okay. And first, before we get in there, if you want to jump into the comments, we'd love that. Leave your thoughts about mourning with those that mourn, suffering, whatever part of it you want to chat about. Leave us some comments.
For sure.
So this quote comes from Everything Belongs. It's a podcast where a couple of the people from the Center of Action and Contemplation are talking with Richard Rohr. So this is Mike Petro talking, but he's talking about a quote or a thought that Richard has taught him. So Mike says, "I grew up in a theological system that taught me that Jesus suffered for me so I didn't have to, and Jesus died for me so I could live forever. And the great gift of Richard's teachings, and a lot of the mystics in the contemplative, has been shifting away from that substitutionary thinking to one of total solidarity, and realizing it's not that Jesus suffered for me, it's that Jesus suffers with me, or that the divine suffers with me. It's not that Jesus died for me, it's that Jesus or the divine dies with me. No one suffers alone. No one dies alone. We are not alone. And in the invitation to imitate Christ, we are called to be there with each other in our loneliness and in our suffering. And this is the great work of love and community, which is how we meet in sorrow, sadness, and celebration." So good.
It's so good. and super meaningful. And that's, he had the same experience that I did, and I think that a lot of us do in the church, which is being taught that Jesus died, Jesus suffered specifically so that I don't have to. And it can be difficult when that breaks down, right? Which is, I'm still suffering, and there's lots of different ways that we can be suffering, death of a family member, terrible cancer diagnosis, all of these sorts of things. And I also, in this, I don't want to take away from people who do have an experience where they feel that Jesus Christ has taken away their pain.
Yeah.
And I'm in no position to invalidate what anybody's feeling. But in my experience, that hasn't been the case. And maybe praying for pain to go away, praying for happiness and joy and some of these things. My experience has not been that those things come.
Well, maybe the pain is lessened. Like when you pray, like I do think there is divine help that can kind of buoy us up and help us feel that we're not alone. But I've never had the experience that the pain just goes away.
Right. And you hear about it in like a testimony meeting sort of context.
Yeah. Everything was tied up with a bow and
right.
It was all taken care of.
And the other kind of theological angle that I think we often take on that as Latter-day Saints is that God is going to strengthen us to make it through trials and those sorts of things. And I think that's true as well. I think that's true for a lot of people. For me, it doesn't reverse, how much, again, like theological context we have for this idea of God is going to heal us and he's going to take away our pain. And there's so many scriptural examples, especially during Jesus' life in the New Testament, in the Book of Mormon as well, in 3rd Nephi. You've got the woman with the issue of blood, and you've got Lazarus, and you've got the daughter of Jairus, and you've got the man who was born blind, and you have all of these people in the Book of Mormon. They line up in front of Jesus with all their sick, and he heals all of them. And so it's so easy to take away this idea that I'm just going to get healed. All I have to do is ask, and I will get healed. And again, maybe that is true for some people. That hasn't been true in my case.
Yeah. One thing that I heard that I think is really cool and important to remember is that Jesus healed people from the wounds that they carry in this world. Like it was a very almost temporal healing.
Right.
So that tells me, like, we are here to mourn with those that mourn, for the pains that they are feeling right now. We don't need to push that off and say, oh, it'll be taken care of in the eternities. You'll be fine. But this is very real. People are suffering right now, and we have covenanted to do what we can to ease that suffering and to comfort these people. And I'll just point out again that Jesus never checked if they believed first. He didn't care if they were worthy or unworthy. Like, he just healed and loved everybody. That, like the Mike Petro thing at the beginning, if it's our job to emulate Christ, then we have to be there for each other and really mourn and care for people when they're going through that suffering, whatever it is.
Well, and what a powerful concept that phrase from Mosiah 18, mourn with those who mourn, comfort those who stand in need of comfort, is exactly what Jesus does for us. And so when we're asked to mourn with those who mourn, we're just asked to be Christ-like.
Yeah.
We're asked to do exactly what he does for us every day. You know, and I again, we kind of fall back on that like penal substitution type theory of suffering, which is Jesus Christ did it so we don't have to. But I think of it more as he did it, he suffered all of it so that he can sit with us and that he can understand and he can have real empathy and sit with us while we have that kind of pain.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important, and it's hard to remember. It's hard to like put ourselves in that position of trying to be empathetic, and because we don't get to experience everything that everybody around us experiences. We don't get to suffer in all of the same ways. And I think that the way that we suffer and the way that we mourn is so individual. The way, when my dad passed away a couple years ago, the way that I mourned his death is not going to be the same way that you mourn your dad whenever he dies, which hopefully won't be for a really long time.
He's probably watching. Hang in there, Dad.
But the mourning that we go through is very personal.
Yeah. And
I could never prescribe to somebody, this is the way that you need to handle this mourning because this is what I did. Or, you know, that's not our role. Right. Our role is to be there with them, help them process what's going on, to work through that suffering, not just push them out of it so that they don't suffer anymore, so that they're not sad anymore.
Right.
And that's maybe where our society has done us poorly.
Yeah, that's fair. And I want to be inclusive in how we talk about suffering and pain as well, because we've already kind of touched on like major tragedies, right? You know, a parent dying, you know, or like a child dying, you know, terrible things,
illnesses,
abuse, you know, very, very big, heavy things. But that's not the only pain we're talking about. And this is where it gets a little bit vulnerable for me is sometimes there's just pain in the everyday. And sometimes the tragedy is just that tragic sense of life. And we all carry light and darkness inside of us. And sometimes that's just a lot to carry. It doesn't take somebody dying to have pain and to feel that darkness in your life. And so when we're talking about suffering and mourning with those who mourn, that's all of us, and pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and as I've gotten older, that's become a little more crystal clear for me. And these things that I feel in the day to day, sometimes it's me mourning, you know, the loss of what my faith used to look like, you know, and it looks like something different now, and it's great and it's positive. But it's different than it used to be. So, you know, sometimes that's a function of deconstruction. Sometimes it's just a function of being a human being and living in mortality.
Yeah, there's a quote that I found from Richard Rohr again that says, "Pain is the rent we pay for being human, it seems, but suffering is usually optional." I thought that was
That's really interesting.
Yeah. We're all going to feel pain. And the suffering, like, just sitting in that suffering, I think that's the optional part. I don't think that we get to, like, I think pain and suffering kind of go hand in hand.
I'm kind of using them interchangeably.
Yeah. But then he continues, Jesus does not observe human suffering from a distance. He is somehow in human suffering with us and for us.
Yeah. Sitting with us.
Yeah.
While we're in pain. I also want to bring into the conversation Francine Benyon. And if you're unfamiliar with Francine Benyon, she was she was on a
board, Relief Society board, maybe, or Young Women's board. I don't remember.
Yeah, I should have checked that before.
She's my great aunt. I should have known that.
She's very cool.
She was very cool.
And she gave a famous talk called A Latter-day Saint Theology of Suffering. And it is a masterpiece. Mm-hmm. And you should look it up, and you should read it, and then you should think about it, and then you should read it again, and it's one of those.
It's in the At the Pulpit book, so it's on the church library app, whatever.
Yep, easy to find.
Yeah.
And she talks a lot about this concept of a theology of suffering. A theology here being how we make sense of things, how we make sense of the world, and how we make sense of this mortal experience. And there's a couple of things that she says here that I want to quote directly from her talk. One is that she talks about how we really kind of lack a unifying theology of suffering in the church, and we tend to make up for it by kind of having our own little theologies of it. And if you think we have a unifying theology, then you have one of these, because not everybody feels that way. She says, one person thinks God sends suffering to teach us or to test us. Another thinks God or Satan can affect only our response to the suffering, and some think it is Satan who is causing the suffering. Others think there should be no suffering at all if we are righteous, and certainly no misunderstanding at all about why it is happening. That's not none of those are new concepts. We look back to the New Testament and the disciples asking, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind, and this idea that suffering shouldn't come if you're righteous. But one thing that I've seen in my own life is I thought I had a pretty good handle on this until things got harder for me. And then I realized that the things I'd been saying before were pretty much full of it. And this is what Francine Benyon says on that. She says, we may live comfortably with a framework which has inherent holes and contradictions, as long as the suffering is someone else's, or as long as our own suffering isn't very great. But holes and contradictions have a way of becoming very important when anguish is our own, or when we feel the pain of persons we care about. And so when the pain becomes real, any of those ideas we had about, like, oh, you just need to read the scriptures more, you just need to ask God to take it away and he'll take it away from you, those things may have made sense to me when I was younger and a little bit more naive, I think, about some of these things. And then when you're the person that's going through it, it's a very different thing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I feel like with some of her stuff, that first paragraph where she says, is it God, is it Satan? I feel like my theology around it was a little of column A, a little of column B. Like, I probably thought both of those at certain parts. And if it was Satan, if it was suffering because of maybe a choice that I made, then it was Satan that was pushing me into that suffering or something, making me pay for a bad choice or something like that. And if it was maybe just something that happens naturally, that, this is just a consequence of nature, then I probably would attribute that to God. I don't necessarily think that our heavenly parents are out there like, voodoo doll, like now her back is going to hurt really bad. I don't think that's how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if we roll this back, if we look really high level, and this doesn't take the pain away, this doesn't even necessarily make it better. But if we roll all the way back to before this life, we sat in a premortal council and we made a decision and we all chose to come here. for this plan. And this was specifically the plan that was going to allow us to have pain in our lives. And one thing that I don't know is, when we made that decision, did we know what our experience was going to be?
What the specifics were.
Yeah. Did we know what pain we were going to suffer, or was it a roll of the dice on what we were going to get?
What part of humanity are you going to get?
Yeah, which person was going to literally die of starvation alone?
Yeah.
And who was going to be sexually abused by their father, who was up on the stand as a bishop on Sundays, and who was going to have depression to the point where taking their own life seemed preferable to being alive. I don't know that, but I think that we all knew that those options, not really options, but those possibilities were on the table.
Yeah.
And we still decided to come here. And so that does not make the pain better. That does not make the pain easier. It does mean to me that there's a purpose in it. And we probably don't understand the kind of eternal magnitude of that, but it means to me that it was worth choosing over the other plan that probably didn't have pain in it.
I think that's interesting what you're saying, because I don't think all pain or suffering needs to have a purpose.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking right now of the people in Gaza or Ukraine or the Congo or Sudan or, any number of places around the world who are suffering because of one or, a group of people that are horrible.
Yeah. Decisions that they didn't make.
Right.
Weren't involved in at all.
And so, are they supposed to find meaning in their suffering? I don't think so. Maybe it will push them to connect with a higher power. But if that's what you're meaning by there's a reason, there's a purpose in the suffering, then maybe I can get behind that. But I just don't know that, because I don't want people to suffer and struggle and think, well, I have to find something. I have to find a reason for this, or I'm just not doing it right, or I'm never going to get through it until I find the reason. Oftentimes it's 20 years later and you look back and you're like, oh, well, now I can see why that happened, or, whatever. So I want to be really careful that we're not prescribing finding a purpose as you're suffering.
So let me put a little different point on that, because I think there is purpose in suffering. But I don't know that there's always a purpose in that particular suffering.
Okay.
So I think there's a reason that suffering exists and that pain exists. And I think one of those reasons is that, our ultimate goal is to become like God, right? We believe there's some, spiritual growth and increase that we need to accomplish. But I don't think it's all about, starting now to prepare for something else. I think it's something that we're starting now and that we're going to continue. After this life, and that there's ongoing growth there. Talking about suffering as a general concept, I actually want to pull in like a scripture mastery scripture here that kind of changed meanings for me, and it's Ether 12:27, which is, and if men come unto me, I will show unto them their weakness. Remember that one?
Yep.
And I've actually heard it described this way before, and I didn't get it at the time. So maybe you'll get it like I suddenly did, or maybe you'll get it later.
Or maybe you already did. We're just slow.
Maybe this was obvious. But it does not say, if men and women come unto me, I will show unto them their weaknesses. But it's, I will show unto them their weakness, which is like a general term. The fact that they are weak.
That they're human.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. And the fact that each one of us is small, a little bit. And we have great eternal possibilities. But when we go to God, he will show us that we are, they will show us that we are human, like you said, and mortal and weak, and not in an insulting way. And that's something that I feel now.
Yeah.
And that's where that eternal growth can come from.
Yeah, there's a really great episode out right now on Faith Matters. Their most recent one was Stephen Sharp Nelson. who's the cello guy of the piano guys, and talking about ADHD. And he actually brings up this scripture and talks about how our weakness helps us to be humble, and goes into all of that. So go listen to that episode. It's really, really good.
Yeah. And shout out to the fibromyalgia sufferer in the comments.
Yeah.
I can't feel your specific pain, but I know it's there.
Yep.
And please do jump in the comments if you have other thoughts or questions. This is such an individual topic, and everybody can understand this a little differently.
So we've talked about, the suffering and all of that, but our covenant, which we kind of talked about earlier, is to mourn with those that mourn, bear the burdens, comfort people that stand in need of comfort. How do we do that? The quote that we shared at the beginning from Mike Petro of, we need to imitate Christ to, do these things. Let's talk about some specifics. Like, how do we mourn with people that are mourning? What does that look like? Because we all need to do it better.
Yeah. And I'm not great at this. And I don't know that I have great answers here. I can say something that we don't do or shouldn't do, which is tell people how to get over it. Right? And this is exactly what I was saying earlier. It's easy to have all the answers until you're that person.
Yeah.
And so saying, you just need to pray more, you just need to go to the temple, you just need to read your scriptures, those are all fabulous things.
Yeah. Or when somebody dies, I hate it when people say, they were just needed on the other side. God has a mission for them. I was like, no, that is the dumbest answer. I'm not even going to accept that as a possibility.
And maybe for some people, that's a very helpful thing.
Yeah, that was not comforting to me at all. When people said, God just needs your dad more than you do. And I was like, no, it's like, he just died. I need my dad.
When it's said that way, it feels really dismissive.
Yeah.
And like, you shouldn't actually be sad. You shouldn't actually have pain in this case, when no, you absolutely should.
Yeah. Even the thought of, at least I know I'm going to see them again. Like, there is truth to that. That does bring some hope. But right in the moment, it's just a platitude, and I don't want to hear it. Now I'm going to get emotional. When my dad died, I was down at my parents' house for a good number of days. And then I came home, and there's a woman in my ward who I knew, we're not super close, but I call her a friend. I think she's great. Her dad had passed away maybe 6 months before.
Yep. And
she showed up on my porch with some bread, and we hugged and just cried for a good 10 minutes, just standing in the door frame. We just stood there and hugged each other and cried. And it was one of the most beautiful things, because I knew that she understood me. And even the people that didn't understand the exact pain that I was feeling, when they showed up to, bring me flowers or, whatever little thing it was, or to just send a text, hey, I'm thinking about you, those things matter. And that is important. We've got a message here from Jenny. She says, when my son passed away, and since, when people find out, the most helpful thing I've heard is along the lines of, this is so hard, it doesn't make sense, and it hurts. They join me in my grief. They don't try to push it away to spare their own feelings. I love that. That is so true. And I think that is society's problem. It's not just an LDS problem, but it's a societal problem, that we just want to push it all away and feel comfortable again, and not feel the awkwardness and the pain of suffering. But sitting in those hard times, that matters.
Yeah, the person who, lost a child, lost a parent, these sorts of things, they have that cross that they need to carry. And being told something about how they should carry it is not going to help. Yeah. That doesn't help in that case.
Yeah. So I feel like you've teed up a quote. So this is my absolute favorite quote from Fiona Givens, and it is the reason that I wear a cross every day. And she actually gave this in an LGBTQ affirmations meeting, I think in 2015, I want to say. But she talks about this thought of how we all have to carry a cross. And she's talking about our baptismal covenants. So we're going to read this quote. She says, "Now I'm a very visual person, and when Christ says, 'Pick up your cross and follow me,' I see him out before us dragging his cross, and we're all spread out behind him carrying our own. There isn't a single person in the room not carrying a cross. We're all carrying crosses. As we enter the waters of baptism, we covenant to bear each other's burdens. Picture that with me. You're struggling along under the weight of your own cross, and your friend beside you, or perhaps somebody completely unknown, collapses under the weight of his or her cross. As you bend down to help that person with the burden, of necessity, you must touch that cross. It is only then that you understand the nature and the depth of the pain that that person is carrying."
Platitudes fail. It does not help to say, read your scriptures more often, attend all 3 services, as boring as they might be, every Sunday. It is only when we touch the pain that we are in a position to be able to mourn, to be able to enter that second covenant, to mourn with that person. It is only then that we can truly comfort, that we can be good friends, like Job's great friends, for an entire week before they ceased to be good friends and became dreadful friends. They sat with him a week and said nothing at all. Only then, when we understand the pain, can we offer words of comfort that reach deeply, and only then can we take upon ourselves the name of Christ.
I love that quote so much. And I wear this cross, and every time I touch it, I think I need to reach out and touch somebody else's cross. Who can I connect with and help lift them? That is a very real and actionable thing that we can do to emulate Christ and to really mourn and comfort the people around us.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful quote.
That's really beautiful, and I love that concept. We've talked a little bit about crosses before on that.
Yeah.
So we're going to wrap up in a couple minutes here. If you have other thoughts or comments or questions, please drop them in the chat. I have a couple last things to share here.
Okay.
And one is, I shared at the beginning that there are so many stories in the scriptures where Jesus just heals somebody and just poof, in a moment, the pain is gone. And like you said, generally physical pain. But the scriptures tell the other stories too. And a really kind of iconic one is Joseph Smith in Liberty Jail in section 121 of the Doctrine and Covenants. And the Lord does not say, I'm going to take this away from you, or I'm going to make it so you don't feel the pain. He says, thine adversity and thine afflictions shall be but a small moment, and says, your job is to endure it well. And so, Joseph Smith prayed, I'm sure, to get out of this situation. This was the God, where's the pavilion that covers thy hiding place. I'm going to get the wording wrong there. And God says, sorry. Like, there's some pain that we need to go through. But then I want to contrast it with another verse.
Well, I have one quick thought that this phrase of endure it well, that can feel like you have to do it a certain way to endure it well. But again, this is personal. This is between you and our parents. There's endure it well is going to look different for everybody. And so don't feel any pressure or, huge weight on you to endure it a certain way and come out on the other end a certain way.
Yep.
But endure it well in what is good for you.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's other examples of this. There's Paul in 2 Corinthians where he talks about he has a thorn in the flesh, and he never tells us what it is. Some sort of temptation or pain, or, could be a physical ailment of some sort. And he says that he asked God to take it away, and he asked 3 times, and God said no. And in those verses in 2 Corinthians 12, he's like, all right.
I tried.
Would have loved a different answer there. But the last verse that I want to add to that is Matthew 28:20, which is when the Lord says, remember, I am with you always. And that's the important part here. And that is Jesus Christ being willing to mourn with us when we mourn, and knowing that can be a lot and can be very often. He's always going to be there with us.
Yep. This was good.
It was really good.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Really appreciate the comments and the thoughts and just tuning in so we don't kind of just shout blankly into the internet.
All right. See you next week.
Thanks. See ya.